This must be June, not January, June 11th, 1953, our GPC servers training class. And at the concluding part of our consideration yesterday, we were giving attention to the function of the mind. I'd like to expand that point a little. We remember that inner or outer, we are functioning in the current of one spirit. And if we recognize that there are two primary levels of mind involved, which in turn are subdivided, but while there are two levels of mind involved, they are properly one mind, the mind that was in Christ Jesus, as it was put. And we have, in our function in the outer sense, without conscious regard to these basic principles, a clear illustration, not complete perhaps, but important. We recognize that there are certain functions of the body which, from the standpoint of the conscious mind, are conceived to be automatic. The beating of the heart, the peristaltic action related to the digestive processes, etc. All of these automatic functions, which are not particularly and specifically in the range of the conscious mind as such. This illustrates how there is a level of mind in relationship to conscious mind which takes care of those things about which the conscious mind should not have to give particular constant consideration. If the function of the human being were correct, any maladjustment in the range of the automatic factors of control, which center in mind, of course, could be readily and quickly taken care of. If the heart, subconscious aspects of the mind, were properly functioning in relationship to deity, any faulty direction or any tendency to develop faulty direction in the automatic functions would be easily taken care of through the conscious mind. But in the present state of things, that is not the case. It takes special consideration and a careful outworking, because the relatedness of the conscious mind and that aspect of mind which takes care of the automatic functions has been disrupted. Just so, the conscious mind of man is supposed to take care of certain functions in relationship to the mind aspect of deity, and yet the pattern of relatedness has been disrupted, so that the outer mind conceives itself to be on its own. Once we begin to see this correlation and recognize that with proper polarity, proper response, that which is not in order round about us, that which is of any malfunction, maladjustment, beyond the range of the conscious mind to correct as such, would simply produce automatically a pressure pattern, causing the vibrational factors to penetrate more deeply or higher, whatever term might be most easily understood, into the vibratory fields of the mind, so that it would connect up with the inner factors of mind. If the outer mind, or the conscious mind as we ordinarily think of it, becomes bothered, breaks the pattern of polarity, the pressure factors which are necessary to the processes of connecting up never reach to the level of mind that would be in position to take care of the problem. The wavering tendencies, then, in the conscious mind, with the emotional aspects too, of course, feeling, are so inclined to become subject to external things because of self-centeredness. The self-centeredness puts the point of polarity at the wrong level. If the level of polarity is in the range of mind that is not capable of taking care of all things, then the pressures can go no further than to the point of polarity. And there is, by reason of this false pattern of polarity, a gap established between the levels on which the mind can function and the levels on which the mind should function. So, restoring correct polarity to the proper patterns of deity allows the individual to hold steady without regard to external pressures. And the mind doesn't attempt to take the ill condition or the concept about the ill condition simply to itself to try to figure it out and determine an answer. The mind becomes a channel through which the pressure patterns induced by the circumstance reach through to higher or inner levels of consciousness, whereupon the divine pattern of activity is instituted, movement begins, and it carries on out through the conscious mind into the range of action. Now this should extend unbroken from the highest levels of mind in deity, not just in one being, but by reason of relatedness of God beings, the highest levels of mind in deity to the lowest levels on which mind as such functions. That would certainly include much more than the region of automatic function in your own bodies. It would extend out into the ranges of the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, etc. But the various levels of mind function have been broken up. There are gaps intervening between that which ought to be made manifest and that which is made manifest. So, we should begin to perceive here that just as there is only one spirit, and all being from the highest point of focalization in deity through to you in the outer sense. All being properly functions in the current of this one spirit. As there are aspects of that spirit, there are aspects of mind. But that reality of mind should be seen as extending from the highest focalization of deity through you into the levels of your own function and out through you to all other levels below you, so that you are an integral part, a link in the chain, shall we say, or a vibratory factor in the varying levels of mind which makes a whole or complete thing. As long as you think of mind as being limited to a given level, you will be separating yourself from that which is above and from that which is below. You need not have any immediate concern about what is above, particularly outside of the general pattern of recognition of focalization, and you need not be concerned as to just what is below. It is for you to function at your point in the chain so that there is no break from the highest that is above to the lowest that is below. And mind, in this sense, is all the way through. Now, sometimes human beings begin to perceive something of the vastness of the reality of mind, and they begin to talk about universal mind, as if it were some kind of a cloud or something, universal mind, or a sea of mind. And your bit of mind is supposed to be more or less like a drop in a bucket or in an ocean. And so they try to develop a state of universal consciousness by talking about a universal mind. There may be some things that can be improved at certain levels, temporarily at least, by such a consideration. But it is a most misleading concept, because it fails to recognize the specific focalizations of being, the pattern of being, and it fails to recognize the particularized aspects of mind, the levels of mind, the focalizations, etc. So, we begin to see that while mind does properly interpenetrate through all levels of being, all levels of creation, from the highest focalization of deity in the center of the cosmos, to you and through you to all forms of creation below you, it is not something that is like a sea, just undifferentiated water or something of that nature. It is something which has its particularized, characteristic, specific patterns. And just as you examine the structure of flesh, the structure of skin, for instance, there are layers of the skin, and then there are different types of flesh and different organs, different substances. Your liver is made of different patterns of substance and form than is your heart, for instance. You've been studying these things, so you appreciate what I mean. All of these differentiated aspects of form and substance in your body. Just so, there are innumerable aspects, focalizations, levels of mind within the one vast reality of mind which relates to the complete pattern of deity, including all God beings from the central focalization of deity and the central Son of Sons out to you. And there is no level of form or creation There's no level of being anywhere but has its particular patterns with respect to mind in actual fact, even with respect to the grass, for instance. But it does not all have self-consciousness as we think of self-consciousness. And we have been inclined to conceive that aspect of mind which we utilize in what we call self-consciousness as something differentiated and separated from that which is above and that which is below, as if the mind in you must somehow perceive something up above you, learn that for itself, and somehow make what is above be here as a different thing. Do you see what I mean? And it isn't a different thing, it's the same thing. And once you begin to see that properly held in polarity, you share the sum total of all mind everywhere, without any break between you and that which is above, or between you and that which is below, or between you and that which is on your particular level of being, your associates. This vast reality of mind is something which the finite mind, as we speak of it, the limited, segregated aspect of self-consciousness, which human beings are so proud of, simply cannot adequately, of and by itself, begin to grasp. It gets lost in the idea and tries to imagine how it itself, as a segregated thing, is going to produce and contain within itself, you might say, imitations or counterparts of everything that is in mind everywhere else, so that it can be the whole thing all by its little self. Now, of course, it can't, and that's where man gets into trouble. But once man begins to realize that his particular focalization of consciousness is simply a point in this wholeness of mind, not as an ocean, but in a pattern, specifically focalized at every point, properly patterned according to the truth, properly subject to the factors of control, so that there needs to be no break, you can begin to see that in consciousness you are a focal point of the whole cosmos. You begin to live and move and have your being in deity. You begin to realize that the very fact that you are a focalization in consciousness means that all mind, above, below, around about, extending to the highest point of deity, is a part of that mind which comes to focus in you, and that you have all mind back of you. Now, it is true that you must have a certain conscious awareness as a starting point for a consciousness or understanding of that which may be present at other levels of mind or in other focalizations of mind. We've emphasized over and over again that we must move from the known to the unknown. And unless you have in your consciousness something that provides a starting point, that which is contained in mind, singular, cannot reach you, and it is of no value to you, but it is there. It is as if we might have a vast library of knowledge and information sitting out here with the doors locked, the windows barred, and armed guards at the doors to see to it you didn't get in and learn anything. Now, of course, you lock it yourself, actually. You maintain the guards. It isn't done arbitrarily against you. You do it yourself. Just so you can't get in and have a consciousness of relatedness to the vastness of the reality of mind in God. Now, those factors of mind, or that which we may speak of as truth, or awareness, or knowledge, which are particularly important to you if you are going to function effectively, correctly in life, must be connected up with you from the standpoint of learning about the basic facts and principles in that field. If you are going to function in relationship to helping people get well, for instance, just the idea that now I'm going to serve God, I'm going to let God do some healing through me, doesn't produce an awareness of the function of the body. You wouldn't automatically know the names of the bones and the muscles and the nerves. You wouldn't automatically understand anything about what goes on in the body. You have to learn it in the sense of your starting points, your beginning points of awareness. Once those are established, you have a connecting link in your consciousness in relationship to all the knowledge or truth or awareness in the whole of cosmic mind that may be necessary to you. Your capacity to let it work through you may be involved, but you have a direct relatedness to all that is essential to you. But no one point, insofar as you are concerned at least in this world, no one point can have all of this in consciousness. Man isn't built that way. He isn't designed to have in one mind everything that is. Even the focalizations of deity in relationship to this world, our own Lord and King, for instance, isn't designed on that basis, his mind. He is, of course, perfectly capable of establishing connecting vibrational factors with anything that is important to him or his sphere of function and service. I'm not suggesting he's limited, but there is only one point in all the cosmos where there is a need for a particularized pattern of relatedness to all consciousness, and that's the centering of it. Now, I don't know that there would be any gain in your aspiring to be the centering of everything that there is in all the cosmos. You weren't created to be that, and for myself, I have no desire to be that. I am perfectly contented that the centering should be where it is, and it's going to stay there whether you like it or not in any case, so we might as well accept it. But I am happy with the arrangement myself, completely happy with it. Absolutely satisfied, not in the least bit envious of that God being who carries the responsibility of the absolute focalization of everything there is in all the cosmos. That's his job, and he's happy there. But that's not my place. Now, once we begin to see that, we stop trying to be something that we are not supposed to be. We stop trying to get something to ourselves because we see that that is maintaining a pattern of separateness, of gettingness. We are going to take something out of universal mind and take it into ourselves, or we're going to examine it in universal mind, something of that sort, and make a duplicate of it, have something that is identical that we're going to have in our minds so that we can say, well, now I'm just as smart as whoever carries that focalization. That isn't the way it works at all. That's a pattern of separateness and of segregation. Our pattern is of oneness, of unification, of sharing. Once we have about 3 billion people living on this earth who have all of the capacities of their true natures in working order, properly polarized physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, functioning as divine men and women should, then in manifest form here on earth we will have all of the awareness, all of the consciousness of God and everything else that is necessary to perfect function on earth. And that will be well. But that will not include in specific form, perhaps an awareness in a general sense, but not in a specific sense, much of the truth, knowledge, information that may be available in other parts of the universe or cosmos. I could tell you something about some of the few vacations I have had from the particularized patterns of responsibility that are mine in this divine arrangement. I've had a few vacations, but it would sound so fantastic to you, and much of it couldn't possibly be put in words. I took certain people up in an airplane this morning who had been up for the first time. Helen here is one of them. And she's heard me talk about it. She's heard other people talk about it. But she knows now that what she had in mind by reason of hearing isn't an adequate portrayal of the actual experience. Now, if that be so in relationship to such a little thing as flying through the air and looking down on the earth, how much more is it true with respect to the whole pattern of being? Now, I could perhaps make it entertaining, perhaps a little spectacular, a little sensational, talking to you about some of the journeys that I have made through the universe itself and on out into the cosmos. I'm not talking about while I was living in this particular body that you see here. I'm talking about something that worked out in intervals between particularized manifestations in this sphere of things. And for some it might have some meaning, others it wouldn't. I'm not particularly interested in talking about it in any case right now. I mention it for one purpose only, to help you to see that there are these different levels, that there are these aspects of being. And when I stand here before you and talk to you, I'm not talking from the standpoint of, well, just what's contained here in the Bible, for instance, or what somebody has said, or what somebody wrote somewhere back along the line. I'm talking to you from the standpoint of what I know from personal contact and function in this sphere, extending, if you please, to the central Son of Sons, because I've been there. I've been there. I know by personal experience. I wouldn't want to live there all the time, but it was wonderful, glorious beyond anything that you could possibly imagine. But I've been there, up and down the line, visiting so many different parts of the cosmos and the universe and the solar system. But that doesn't mean I've been everywhere and seen everything, that I know all about all of these different things. I don't any more than if you you'd never been in Utah and took a quick journey through Utah and stopped for a few hours in Salt Lake City and took a quick look at the Great Salt Lake, the great beds of salt there where they've had races, etc. And we came back, claimed to know absolutely everything there was to know about Utah. Answer any question now about Utah. Well, that would require that you knew absolutely everything about every person living there, all the conditions, all the activity, everything. You couldn't. and wouldn't be necessary. It would be foolish for you to think that you should. Well, that principle extends on out, naturally and correctly. So we begin to see that there is a focalization of consciousness in you, which you have been inclined to call I. And if you think of that as something separate from all this vast arena of being, then you're in trouble, because you are up against the necessity of trying to duplicate in yourself and for yourself everything that's out here. And you can't do it. And you get mixed up. Get a little bit of what maybe you do need, but it isn't in the right setting. It doesn't have everything related to it that it should have, and so on, and you get into confusion. But if this focalization of consciousness that you call I is seen for what it really is, a point of focus in relationship to mind in the whole cosmos, extending all the way through, not separated from it, but a part of it, you begin to see that when you function correctly, God, everything that there is in being, is back of you in the expression of that, and you are a focus point for the cosmos. Not in the sense of having everything of the cosmos complete in its essences in you. That is true at only one point in all the cosmos. The God of gods, the central God of gods. Only one point of being anywhere where that is true, that all the essences of everything are centered at one point in one being. But this wholeness of being with all of its essences is back of you, and whatever is necessary to your true function, according to the divine design of your being, is available to you in its essences, extending out, or through, up, down, around, however. When you begin to get into this field, there's no up, there's no down, everything is relative. You begin to realize that the essences of focalization, peculiar to you and divinely ordained in you, have their roots, their branches, their foundations extending out through the whole cosmos, not just the universe, not just the solar system, not just a few people here or there. We're a part of a whole thing. But this whole thing is connected up in certain ways. You may say, my body is a whole thing. I hope it is. But you must recognize that it's connected up in a certain way. The relationship between your head and the rest of your body, the torso in particular, is established through your neck. Now, if you said to yourself, I'm going to disregard my neck, I don't think my neck has anything to do with it. My head can have a relationship to my big toe without regard to the neck. I just as soon somebody cut the neck out. It doesn't necessary anyway. Doesn't make sense, does it? The particularized patterns of relationship are the things which human beings have been prone to disregard, ignore, or deny. The means of having it all connected up is important. Just as the way your shoulder is attached to your body is important. Just the way your big toe is attached to your foot, or whatever else. The patterns of relatedness, the way it's connected up. And it must function on the basis of the way it's connected up. And if it isn't connected up, it isn't much good. And you try to ignore the way it's really connected up, it wouldn't be of much value. Anyone who reached a point of, what shall we say, a point in the demented state where he or she was completely convinced that nobody on the face of the earth had a neck, person claiming he couldn't see any neck, heads floating around above bodies, and there isn't any neck. absolutely convinced of it and trying to sell the idea to everybody else, he'd probably get restrained somehow. Probably be put someplace where he would be of no particular danger to others anyway. They're swearing that no one had a neck. And the head just floats above the body. There isn't any such thing as a neck. And anybody that says there's a neck's a liar. And so, no. It'd be just as sensible as a lot of the ideas and attitudes and concepts which human beings maintain, because they refuse to recognize the patterns by which these things are connected up. If, then, the individual refuses to see it, and does not see it, does not recognize the patterns of relationship, he is as if there were no relationship. The relationship has no meaning, and he is in a limited state of being. So, you begin to recognize that mind, as such, is something which does not, in actual fact, have any break in it anyway. As far as your functional awareness is concerned, there appear to be breaks, but there aren't. It's only an appearance. It's only something you have established in yourself on a basis of self-delusion, with no more sense, no more truth than the human being who reached the demented state where he believed that all heads floated above bodies without any physical connection. We know there is a physical connection. So, let us begin to realize that we are not in any sense under the necessity of having a duplicate or imitation or counterpart of that which is in mind out there established in us so that we can be complete. Because that which is in mind out there is ready to function through your vocalization of mind if and when it is necessary, right and proper, or when the connection is made. Now, there have been all kinds of fantastic concepts developed about me. People have taken the attitude that, how shall we put it, according to their concept of what it means, I'm supposed to know everything. Well, know everything, what does that mean? A good many years ago, I had a situation develop where certain ones had the idea, or developed the idea, not from what I said, but from concepts that had been presented by other teachers and arbitrarily projected to me, that I knew everything. And they interpreted that on the basis of the idea that I knew every thought that every person had. I was aware of every action that any person performed in relationship to had any connection with me in any way anyway. So I had to point out that I was very thankful to God that such was not the case. That if I had to be aware of all the claptrap that runs around and is called thought in the human minds of all the people around me, I'd be a fit subject for an institution. I have no desire to have an awareness of all of that. I can establish an awareness with respect to that which is needful to me, or that which is necessary to the discharge of my duties and responsibilities. But that is not having a constant, conscious awareness of all the things that are going on. Why should I have? Some people imagine that our Lord Jesus Christ has a constant, conscious consciousness of everything that you think, everything that you do, and so on, either by direct contact somehow or by the reports of all the angels standing in line, coming along and saying, well, now so-and-so did so-and-so today, here's the list, I know you'll be very much interested in all the inane, stupid things that so-and-so did today. My stars alive. He's got better business than that. The awareness of these things is on the basis of proper responsibility and discharge of responsibility. Your part and place in the cosmic scheme of things. And if you had to be aware of all the thoughts and feelings of even one person or another person, you couldn't be yourself, could you? You'd be mixed up with somebody else all the time. Well, most people are. A whole lot more than they realize, because they have established vibratory connections through the patterns of the subconscious with other people, and they're constantly confusing what someone else is feeling with what they are feeling. And you're trying to live the lives of I don't know how many different people, all mixed up inside of yourself, and you never live your own life. That is the mess we start with most people. They may have what they call reasonably good health, and they may have a reasonably good mind, but they're not living their own lives. They're living parts of a lot of other people's lives inside, but not their own. It's merely an existence. It's not living. We begin to realize that you are a part of a whole, that you have a relatedness to that whole, not just from the standpoint of mind, but from the standpoint of all aspects of being, heart and mind and body, so that you can be yourself, so that you can live that aspect of life that you are supposed to live, not having it all mixed up with other people's. The true, pure expression of your own being as God ordained you to be. And then you will be one of the facets of the great gem or jewel of mind, one of the facets of the jewel, the heart, the feeling nature, and the body, peculiar to yourself. Others may be somewhat like you, but it always irks me when someone says, well, I believe you look like so-and-so. Doesn't she look like so-and-so? Why like so-and-so? Why can't each one be himself or herself? There may be similarities, but learn to see people as they are for themselves. Sometimes human beings get a few basic types arranged in their mind from back along in childhood, and they never see anyone else again. Oh, you remind me of my dear dead Aunt Cora. Learn to see people, not dead images of the past. Learn to see people. Don't be mixing people up in your own mind. What does that show when you're always mixing people up and saying, now so-and-so reminds me of so-and-so so much? Well, perhaps there is some similarity. Stop looking at the similarities and look at the distinctions. See people for what they are. What does it show when that happens? That you are living other people's lives, or little parts of them, all mixed up. An internal heart hash. Hash. Made up from the leftovers from many a meal, many a life. The leftovers of many a life turned into hash inside yourself, and you call that living. But that's what most people are experiencing. Not living. Merely existing for a little while. Full of hash. Let's have a decent meal. Let's have a decent life. The straight goods. Stop mixing people up and stop being a mixture of other people's lives. You have a relatedness to other people's lives. But you have your own life. And if you do not have your own life, what have you to offer in relatedness to other people's lives? Hash? They can find hash anywhere. Not a true expression of life in any of them. We begin to look out into the world and we see how true it is. Tragically true. It's comical in some respects, yes, but it's so true. Why is it that there are more hospital beds filled with the insane than people of any other difficulty? Institutional beds occupied by the insane. This is the reason. They've been fed hash for so long. They didn't live their own lives. They were never themselves. They were all mixed up with a lot of other lives, and they never lived. People talk about, well, so-and-so lived from such and such a time to such and such a time. It isn't the truth, generally speaking. There are a few people who have lived, even on a limited scale, a limited level, and have been distinctly individuals, but not many. The rest existed as pots of hash. And it's no good. In such a state there cannot be the true expression of that which one is supposed to be. And so you begin to have a little glimpse, at least, of the principles of wholeness. And until you begin to function on the basis of wholeness, it can't be wholesome. The old saying about bean porridge in the pot 9 days old. The leftovers of too many meals, the leftovers of too many lives, all mixed together and served up, and you call it your life. It's no good. Let's serve up the true living of life, that which we really are, and have a relatedness to people, a relatedness that lets us have a basis of understanding and appreciation so that we can enhance one another, increase one another, not just add a little more nothing to the hash. What is the character of gossip? Hash slingers. That's gossip. Mixing together a little dab of this and a little dab of that left over from someone else's life. And it was all refuse. It should have been dumped to the dogs. It's no good. Refuse. It should have gone down the drain or something. Why mess around all the time in the refuse? I'd rather play in a manure heap. It's right. It's cleaner. It's better. It's more wholesome. And I trust this morning you're beginning to have a realization of what you've tended to do to yourselves, others, and how you can begin to have a pure heart. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. But you can't have a pure heart while you're interested in all the refuse, all the hash left over from other people's periods of existence. Let's have a genuine man, a genuine woman to offer in the service of our God. That's what I mean when I talk about a divine man or a divine woman on earth. Someone that is a being, not just a belly full of hash. Mind, then, extends through the whole arena of being. and that with which you have a contact, that which is focalized in its essences in you as a being, and that with respect to you, which you have a starting point of awareness, can come into manifestation in you and through you as needed. But if you do not have that awareness, that starting point, no. Carrying out this idea with respect to myself a little, I've had people imagine that I should be able to automatically speak any language or understand any language that might be spoken in my presence. You know, the idea, concept of speaking in tongues is a fantastic thing. It is true that if I wanted to devote my time and attention to considering the basic factors that would give me a starting point with respect to any language, I could begin to let that evolve through and use the language in season or the particular pattern of profession or knowledge or whatever else that human beings have. But why is it necessary for me to do that? Why can't someone else do it? I'd like to leave something for someone else to do, and I have no desire to be the whole cheese all by myself. Why should I understand every language on the face of the earth? I'm not interested. There is the fact that when I speak to you, you understand on the basis of your own language. That's speaking in tongues. Because no matter what your background may be, when I speak to you, you find that it comes through in your consciousness on the basis of your own language. And that can extend over into this principle of the different languages like French and Spanish and German and what have you, even Chinese. As soon as the pattern of control works out to that point at least, there's nothing mysterious about it, because that which is actually conveyed in a true sense is conveyed through the Word and not by the Word as such. It's conveyed in the current of the Spirit. And that cycle works out. When there's a pattern of response, when it gets connected up, it's conveyed. And I could stand here and speak in such use of the English language as I may command, and my hearers would hear, not because I was talking their language, but because they were hearing me in their language. And that's the only way that this talking in tongues has any meaning. The human concepts about it have been utterly fantastic and ridiculous. So, as soon or as rapidly as we establish points of awareness, starting points in consciousness, in relationship to that which is necessary to the proper discharge of our responsibilities, we can begin to get connected up with that which should come through us. That's why we have classes here. Not to teach you with so many words, as giving you so much information, but to establish in your consciousness adequate starting points so that you can begin to live and serve and be what God intended you to be. And only so can you share the victory. Only so do you come out of the realm of the dead or the asleep, those who are awakening, and begin to be alive, truly awake, begin to be a divine man or a divine woman. Class dismissed.